The DNA report said my son was excluded at 0%. The same page showed another man at 99.7. She had told everyone the baby was my husband's. That paper proved she lied, and she dropped it in my bathroom like trash. You ever feel your stomach go cold all at once? Because that's exactly how this started for me. She thought shame would keep me quiet. She was wrong. 2 weeks earlier, none of us knew yet. It was a Tuesday night in late September, the kind where the light coming off the chandelier makes everything look warmer than it really is. I had the good china out the wedding set with the thin gold rim because my son and his wife were coming over. And that still mattered to me then. I remember the smell of pot roast filling the dining room and the way the crystal glasses caught the light. Normal, comfortable, familiar, and just a little too quiet. My husband, Robert Miller, sat across from me, shoulders tight, barely touching his food. He's never been a big talker, but that night he wouldn't look up at all. Not once. His eyes stayed locked on his plate like it had answers written on it. I clocked it immediately. Something was off. My son, Evan Miller, was relaxed, laughing, telling us about work like nothing in the world could touch him. He'd always been that way, optimistic to a fault. Sitting beside him was his wife, Nicole Garcia, glowing in that way people talk about when they want you to stop asking questions. I didn't trust it. Halfway through dinner, Nicole cleared her throat and put her hand over Evan's. He grinned before she even spoke, like he already knew. She smiled at the table and announced she was pregnant. Evan jumped out of his chair, knocking it back into the wall, laughing and hugging her like they were in a commercial. Champagne came out. Glasses clinked. Robert poured without looking at me, and I felt this strange, hollow pause settle in my chest. Then Nicole leaned close to me, her mouth near my ear, voice low enough that only I could hear it. She smiled when she said it. She told me the baby was my husband's. I laughed, not because it was funny, because my body didn't know what else to do. She blinked, just for a second. That wasn't the reaction she expected. She whispered again, slower this time, like I was hard of hearing. Same words, same confidence. She picked the wrong one. I kept my face smooth, raised my glass, and toasted the baby like nothing had happened. Evan was still grinning. Robert still wouldn't meet my eyes. Nicole watched me the rest of the night like she was waiting for a bomb to go off. It didn't. Not yet. Would you have flipped the table right there? Or would you have done what I did and waited? Be honest. What would you have done? Comment below. After they left, Robert followed me into the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets like he'd forgotten why he came in there. He finally said my name, real soft. I told him not tonight. One sentence. Flat. I went upstairs and shut the door. He slept in the guest room. The next morning, he sat at the kitchen table reading the paper like it was any other Wednesday. Same routine, same mug, same eggs going cold. He still wouldn't look up. I studied him like a stranger. Nicole texted later that day, all sweetness, thanking me for dinner, calling me Mom. Evan called after that, still riding the high, and casually mentioned Nicole had told Robert about the pregnancy the week before us. A week. That was the crack. Why tell my husband first? That question stuck to me all day. I replayed the dinner in my head, every glance, every pause, Nicole's hand on Robert's arm, Robert's silence. The way she watched me after the whisper, measuring, that wasn't panic. That was control. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't cry to my friends. I didn't accuse. I made a decision. Instead, I was going to find out what was really going on. Because here's the thing, you don't throw a lie that big without thinking you're protected. And people who feel protected usually leave tracks. The next few days, I paid attention. Little things. Robert showering twice a day, charges on the credit card that didn't match his routines, florist receipts when there were no flowers in the house, jewelry store charges that never showed up on my finger. Nicole stopped by the house when Evan was at work. Her visits always ended when I walked into the room. Conversations cut short. Smiles snapped on too fast. One afternoon, I stood at the kitchen window and watched her in the backyard with Robert. She laughed, touched his arm, leaned in close. He smiled back. Just enough. Appearances matter. That night, Robert took a phone call on the back porch. His face went pale. He said he'd be there tomorrow evening and hung up without another word. When I asked where he was going, he said garden supplies. At 7:30 at night, nothing was open. I didn't sleep. The next day, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold, staring at the quiet house, and I knew I was past the point of pretending. Whatever Nicole thought she was doing, it was bigger than an insult and uglier than an affair. And I was done being polite. That was the moment I stopped waiting for explanations and started looking for proof. You'd have felt it too. I crossed a line that morning, and I don't regret it. You know that feeling when your gut is screaming and nobody else hears it? Yeah, that. By Thursday, my house didn't feel like my house anymore. It felt like a stage somebody else was directing, and I was the only one who didn't get the script. Robert Miller moved around me like a man trying not to be noticed. Evan Miller kept calling me with that bright, clueless happiness. And Nicole Garcia, my son's wife, kept floating in and out like she owned the air in every room. I'm Linda Miller, by the way. 65 years old, born and raised in Ohio, and I've been married long enough to know the difference between we're going through something and somebody's lying to my face. This wasn't a rough patch. This was a cover-up. So when Robert left for what he called a doctor appointment Wednesday morning, I didn't wave from the doorway like the sweet wife in a Hallmark movie. I waited until his taillights disappeared past the neighbor's maple tree, then I went straight to his study. His study was always his little kingdom, dark wood, neat stacks, everything in its place. Even the smell in there was him, aftershave and old paper and that faint lemon furniture polish. I stood in the doorway for a second with my heart thumping like I was about to rob a bank. Then I shut the door behind me and got to work. I started with the desk drawers. Pens, Post-it notes, a spare set of reading glasses, a pack of gum that probably expired during the Obama administration. Nothing. I checked the file cabinet next, the one he kept locked. That was the thing he'd never locked it before. Not once in 40 years. I didn't have a key. So I did what every woman who's been underestimated does. I improvised. I grabbed the small flathead screwdriver from the junk drawer in the kitchen, came back, and worked the lock like I was disarming a bomb. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press my elbow against the cabinet to steady myself. Click. And there it was. That tiny sound. The sound of a marriage changing shape. Inside were folders, color-coded, the way he always did it. Taxes, insurance, home repairs. But behind the neat stuff, behind the normal stuff, was a thin manila envelope stuffed with bank statements that weren't ours. Different account number, different heading, same bank. My throat went tight. I pulled the papers out and laid them on his desk, smoothing them like I was trying to calm them down. Checking account? Not our joint one. A separate checking account I'd never seen. An account I never knew. I flipped through the pages, and it wasn't just a little side stash, either. There were deposits that didn't make sense, chunks of money coming in, then cash withdrawals going out in ugly, round numbers. $2,000, $3,000, $500, $5,000. No grocery store, no utility company, no doctor's office, just cash withdrawal, like a punch to the ribs. And the dates weren't years ago. They were recent, like right now. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every page, every line, every total. Because I wasn't about to confront anyone with, I think. I wanted receipts. I wanted something that couldn't be talked around. Nicole could whisper whatever she wanted. Paper doesn't whisper. I was halfway through photographing the last statement when my phone buzzed with a text from Evan. Just a quick, cheerful check-in. Hey, Mom, you good? Nicole said you seemed quiet Tuesday. Oh, she did, huh? Nicole wasn't worried about me. Nicole was taking inventory. I texted back something bland. Just tired, honey, and stared down at those bank statements until my coffee went cold again. My first thought was the obvious one. Affair money. Secret girlfriend money. That's what people do, right? They hide accounts. They sneak around. They buy flowers and jewelry and pretend nothing's happening. But then I looked at those withdrawals again. Cash. Big cash. Over and over. That's not romance. That's ransom. Anyway, I put everything back exactly where I found it. I locked the cabinet, wiped it down with the hem of my shirt like I was erasing fingerprints, and walked out of that room feeling like I'd swallowed gravel. Robert came home around lunchtime, carrying a plastic bag from CVS like he'd picked up cough drops in a magazine. He kissed my cheek, quick, stiff, and asked what I wanted for dinner like we were discussing the weather. I watched his eyes. He didn't blink wrong. He didn't flinch. He didn't act guilty in that dramatic way people expect. He acted, managed. That night, Nicole showed up. No call. No heads up. Just her car pulling into our driveway like she was running errands, and we were a stop on the route. I saw her through the front window, stepping out with her hair perfect, her shirt pulled tight over her belly. She had one hand under it, like she was already practicing for pictures. Robert opened the door before I could. That hit me hard. I'm not even gonna lie. She walked in smiling and called me Mom again, like Tuesday never happened, like she didn't hiss something poisonous in my ear and watch me swallow it. Nicole said she just wanted to check in. She said pregnancy made her emotional, and she'd been so worried. Robert was stressed about becoming a grandpa. She laughed like it was cute. Robert did that quiet smile of his, the one that's usually only for me. He aimed it at her. And I stood there with my hands wet from doing dishes, staring at the two of them like I'd walked into somebody else's marriage. She had some nerve. They went out back, talking in low voices. I dried my hands and followed, staying inside by the kitchen window. We've got that big picture window looking out over the backyard, and I swear it's like it was made for catching people doing things they shouldn't. Nicole stood close to him near the patio. Not family close. Not pregnant daughter-in-law close. Close, close. She touched his forearm. He didn't move away. She laughed. He smiled. And then she leaned in and said something I couldn't hear. Robert nodded. Slow. Like he was agreeing to terms. Terms. That's what it looked like. I snapped a photo through the glass without even thinking. It wasn't a great picture glare, weird angle, but you could see the body language. You could see her hand on him, like she was reminding him who was holding the remote. When they came back inside, Nicole turned that smile on me. Robert was just reassuring me, she said. You know, about the pregnancy. Reassuring. Robert echoed it. Same word. Like they'd rehearsed. I kept my voice light. Reassuring you about what? Nicole blinked. Just once. Then she laughed and said, Oh, you know. Nerves. It's my first baby. And there it was again, the way she danced around specifics like she was skipping stones across a lake. She didn't say anything with weight, because weight is something you can grab. Robert's phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up fast. Too fast. And turned the screen away from both of us. Then, his face changed. Not a lot. Just enough. He stepped into the hallway and answered in a voice so low I could barely hear him. I caught one line because the house was quiet and my nerves were sharp. Tomorrow evening, he said. I'll be there. Nicole's eyes flicked toward the hallway. Like she'd heard it too. Like she was checking that he was still on schedule. My skin crawled. After Nicole left, I waited until Robert was upstairs. Then I walked outside, under the pretense of checking the garden. Our gardener, **, Daniel Rodriguez, **, had been coming by for months, reliable as clockwork. Nice guy. Mid-30s, always polite, always working. That day, he was there. And Nicole was still there too. Not inside. Not in the driveway. In the backyard, near the side gate, where you couldn't see them unless you were looking. I froze behind the curtain of a hydrangea bush like a ridiculous spy in my own yard. Nicole stood with her back to the fence, Daniel facing her, his shoulders tight. She held something small in her hand. An envelope. She passed it to him quick, like she'd done it before. Daniel took it, looked down, and shoved it into his jacket pocket like it was hot. I didn't breathe until she walked away. Why pay our gardener? For what? Daniel went back to raking like nothing happened, but his hands weren't steady. He kept glancing toward the house, toward the windows, toward me, except he didn't know I was right there watching him. Nicole walked around the corner and spotted me. She smiled like we were sharing a sweet moment. "Oh, I didn't see you there," she said. "Liar," I said. "Just checking on the mums. They'll die if you ignore them." In Wade, she laughed, and it sounded like she wanted me to think we were both women in the same club. Pregnancy, family, homemaking, little jokes, but her eyes were cold. That night, Evan came by after work. He was carrying 2 lattes, Starbucks, the one off Sawmill Road, because he's always trying to be thoughtful. He kissed my cheek, hugged Robert, and started talking about baby names like it was the most exciting thing in the world. Nicole floated in behind him, cheerful, performing. I watched them the whole time. Evan's hand resting on her belly, Nicole leaning into him, Robert forcing small smiles, like he was doing reps. And then Nicole said something that made my teeth clench. She said, "Evan, your dad's been so supportive. He's been helping me through the scary parts." Evan beamed at Robert. "Thanks, Dad." Robert's smile tightened. He looked down at his plate again. He couldn't meet my eyes. I excused myself to the kitchen, pretended I needed to check on dessert, and stood there with my hands gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. I could hear them talking in the dining room, the soft clink of forks, the low hum of the refrigerator, and then Nicole's voice, a little louder, like she wanted me to hear. Some people don't understand discretion. Discretion. That word landed like a threat. I walked back in and said, "Discretion about what, Nicole?" She smiled wide, innocent as a choir girl. "Oh, pregnancy stuff. It's private." Robert coughed like he swallowed wrong. Evan didn't notice. He was too busy being happy. That was the hardest part, watching my son live inside a lie and not even know it. So when Robert stood up around 7:30 and said he was running out for garden supplies, I didn't argue. I didn't ask what store was open. I didn't raise my voice. I just watched him grab his keys. "Back soon," he said, and it sounded like he was trying to convince himself. He left, and his car backed out of the driveway. The streetlights threw long shadows across the cul-de-sac. The neighborhood was quiet, kids inside, TVs on, the usual. Evan and Nicole stayed. Nicole said she was tired, so she sat on the couch with a blanket and made a show of rubbing her belly. Evan fussed over her, asking if she needed water, asking if she wanted to go home. She said, "No, I'm fine. I just like being here." Being here, in my home. I pulled up the store hours on my phone while they were in the living room. Home Depot? Closed. Lowe's? Closed. The garden center at Walmart? Closed. Even the 24-hour Kroger near us had shut down overnight hours after the pandemic. So where exactly was my husband going for garden supplies? I wasn't born yesterday. I walked into the hallway and checked the Ring app on my phone. We had a camera on the front porch and one facing the driveway. I tapped Live View and watched the empty street like it was a stakeout. Then my phone buzzed with a notification from the side yard camera, the one near the gate. Movement detected. My stomach flipped. I opened it and saw Nicole slipping out the side door like she knew exactly where the camera didn't catch her face. Evan was still in the living room, distracted by the TV. Nicole moved fast, heading toward the backyard. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my cardigan, stepped out the back door, and cut around the patio, staying in shadow. And there she was near the shed, talking to Daniel again. But this time, she wasn't smiling. Daniel's posture was rigid. Nicole was leaning in, finger pointed, her mouth moving fast. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the tone. It was sharp, commanding, the kind of tone you use when someone isn't following orders. Daniel shook his head. Nicole grabbed his sleeve. He jerked away. Under the security light, she looked dangerous. Then Daniel said something that made Nicole freeze. He started walking toward his truck. Nicole followed, still talking, her hands flying like she was trying to reel him back in. Daniel didn't stop. He got in his truck and slammed the door so hard it echoed down the yard. He peeled out of my driveway like he was escaping. Nicole stood there, breathing hard, then snapped her face toward the house like she could feel eyes on her. She saw me. For 1 second, her mask didn't have time to come back. You know that look people give you when they're lying straight to your face? That. She pasted on a smile and walked toward me like we were two neighbors who just bumped into each other by the mailbox. "Oh," she said, too casual. "I didn't realize you were out here." I kept my voice low. "What was that about?" Nicole's eyes flicked to the shed, then back to me. "Daniel's been stressed. Money stuff. I was just telling him to take care of himself. Give me a break." I stared at her, and she tilted her head like she was studying how far she could push me without me biting. Then she said, soft as syrup, "Linda, you don't want to make things harder than they already are." There it was. The threat without the threat. Evan came out the back door then, calling Nicole's name, and she turned instantly sweet. She wrapped an arm around him and said she'd just been getting fresh air. Evan kissed her temple and asked if she wanted to head home. She said yes, but her eyes stayed on me the whole time, like she was filing me away as a problem. They left. I stayed on the porch, watching their taillights disappear, and I felt this hot, shaky anger rise up behind my ribs. Not wild anger, focused anger. The kind that makes you clean your kitchen at midnight because you don't know what else to do with your hands. Robert came home around 9. No bags, no receipts, no garden supplies. He walked in like he'd been out driving around, his face gray, his jaw tight. He barely said hello. He went straight down the hall, shut himself in his study, and turned on the desk lamp. And then he started making calls. I stood outside the study door, close enough to hear the muffled sound of his voice. He wasn't talking like a man chatting with a friend. He was talking like a man negotiating. I caught pieces. "I told you." Then, "I'm trying." Then, "Tomorrow." Tomorrow again. His voice dropped lower, and I heard one phrase that made my skin go cold all over. "I'll get the money. Not flowers, not jewelry, not romance. Money." I backed away from the door and went to the kitchen, where my phone was still open to the photos I'd taken of that secret account. I scrolled through them with shaking fingers, zooming in on the withdrawals, the dates, the amounts. My brain was trying to force it into a neat little box labeled affair, but it wouldn't fit. A separate checking account, big cash withdrawals, an envelope to the gardener, a pregnant daughter-in-law issuing quiet threats, a husband making desperate calls behind a closed door. This wasn't adultery. It was money. And whatever they were hiding, it was already bleeding into my house. I stared at the bank statement picture again, and I noticed something I hadn't clocked the first time, one deposit line that didn't look like a paycheck or a transfer from our accounts. It was labeled like a payment from a third party, a name I didn't recognize. My thumb hovered over the screen, because if that deposit wasn't from us, then who was paying my husband? That's when I realized I wasn't chasing a scandal. I was chasing a scheme, and it was worse than I thought. I didn't need another clue. I needed proof. And you know what? Proof is usually hiding in the one place nobody thinks a mom will look. That separate bank account kept flashing in my mind like a warning light on a dashboard. Robert Miller's quiet phone calls. Nicole Garcia slipping out to the shed. Daniel Rodriguez taking that envelope like he was swallowing poison. It was all circling the same ugly truth. This wasn't a fling. This was a financial wound. So Friday morning, after Robert left early, again, no explanation, no eye contact, I walked upstairs and went straight into Evan's old room. We still called it Evan's room, even though he'd been married 2 years and hadn't slept in there since before the pandemic. The room still smelled like clean sheets and old books. A dusty Ohio State pennant on the wall, a dresser we never replaced, a closet full of hangers, and a couple forgotten hoodies. Familiar, safe. And that's why it was the perfect place to hide something. I opened the dresser like I was looking for a scarf, slow and casual, like the walls could report me. The top drawer had nothing but random junk cables, a broken watch, a stack of birthday cards. Second drawer, same. Then I pulled the bottom drawer and felt it catch. That drawer was heavier than it should have been. My stomach tightened, and I slid my hand underneath the folded sweaters. My fingers hit paper. A thick stack, shoved flat against the bottom like someone was trying to bury it. I pulled out a manila folder, and the second I saw the first page, I knew I wasn't chasing gossip anymore. I was chasing something that could ruin my son's life. It was a loan document with Evan's full name on it, his address, his social security number, partially masked, a signature that looked like his, but off, like someone tried to copy it while their hand was shaking. There were more pages behind it. Another loan, another, a credit line, a cash advance. Statements with huge withdrawals, not gas money withdrawals, not new tires withdrawals. Big ones, 4,000,000, 7,500,000, 10,000,000. My mouth went dry, and what made it worse, what made me want to throw up right there on that old carpet, was how fresh it all was. Dates from the last few months, not years, not before he met Nicole. While he was married, while he was smiling at that dinner table, I took out my phone and started photographing everything the way I did in Robert's study, page after page. I zoomed in on account numbers, lenders, interest rates, due dates, the kind of paperwork that doesn't care if your family is nice. Paper doesn't care if you're a good person. And then I found a handwritten list tucked in the back of the folder. Just a plain sheet of notebook paper with amounts and names like somebody was keeping score. Cash pull, 6K. Payback, 2K. Ada's olives, borrow 10K. And one line at the bottom that made my heart thump so hard I could hear it in my ears. Do not tell Mom. Oh, okay. I stood in that room holding my phone like a weapon, staring at that line until my eyes burned. I wasn't even mad at first. I was stunned, like my brain couldn't decide what to latch onto. Was Evan lying to me? Was someone doing this to him? Was my husband covering for him? Or was Nicole the one pulling the strings? Because Nicole didn't whisper that baby lie for fun. That was strategy. And now I had something that looked like motive. This wasn't adultery. It was leverage. I put the folder back exactly where I found it, right down to the angle of the sweaters. Then I went downstairs, washed my face, and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror for a long minute. My own house, my own family, and I felt like the last person to know the truth. A couple hours later, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Nicole. Sweet, smiley. Hey, Mom, can I come by? Just need to talk. Need to talk. No, you needed to monitor damage. I texted back, sure, because I wanted her in my line of sight. I wanted to watch her. And I'll be honest, my hands were still shaky from what I'd found. I had that hot feeling in my chest, like anger and fear were fighting over the same seat. Nicole arrived with her own key. That's how comfortable she was. That's how entitled she felt. She let herself in like she paid the mortgage. She had on those soft leggings and a big sweater, one hand on her belly like a prop. She smiled at me like we were girlfriends, then walked straight into my kitchen and started pouring herself water. Linda, she said, all gentle. You've been quiet. Are you okay? I leaned back against the counter and crossed my arms. I'm fine. Nicole tilted her head. You sure? Because sometimes when people get stressed, they start imagining things. There it was. Not concern, a warning. I stared at her and said, why did you tell Robert about your pregnancy a week before you told me? Her smile didn't move, but her eyes tightened. I didn't want to upset you. Try again, I said, calm as ice. Nicole let out this little laugh, like I'd told a joke. I mean, it's not that deep. He's the grandpa. He was excited. He didn't look excited, I said. He looked sick. Nicole set the glass down slow. He's under pressure, Linda. And why is that? She stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was doing me a favor. Because you don't understand how complicated things are right now. For Evan. My stomach flipped at that. She'd said his name like it belonged to her. I kept my voice steady. What's complicated? Nicole's eyes slid toward the hallway, toward Robert's study, like she was checking whether he was within earshot. Then she looked back at me and smiled again. Smaller this time. Meaner. Discretion, she said. That's what keeps families intact. I didn't blink. Discretion is what liars call silence. Nicole's cheeks colored. Just a little. You're being dramatic. Am I? I said. Because you whispered something nasty in my ear at dinner, and you watched me all night waiting for me to fall apart. That's not drama. That's a threat. Nicole's smile dropped completely. It was like watching a mask slide off in real time. You really want to do this? She said. I nodded once. Yeah, I do. She leaned in, voice low and flat. Some people pay dearly for sticking their nose where it doesn't belong. That was it. The real Nicole. No sweetness. No mom. End quote. And you know what's crazy? I didn't feel scared the way she wanted. I felt confirmed. Like, thank you for proving my gut was right. Maybe I'm petty, but I'm petty with receipts. Nicole straightened her sweater and forced a bright smile back onto her face, like she could reset the moment. I'm tired, she said. Pregnancy is exhausting. Then you should go home, I said. She paused at the door and turned back. Evan loves me, Linda. Don't make him choose. When? Then she walked out like she'd won. But I wasn't the one giving ultimatums. I was the one collecting facts. As soon as she left, I called Evan. He answered on the second ring, cheerful as always. Hey, Mom. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him through the phone. Instead, I said, Honey, are you okay? Like, really okay? There was a beat of silence, and then he laughed. Why wouldn't I be? We're having a baby. I swallowed. Nicole's been stressed. End quote. Yeah, he said, and his voice dipped just a hair. She gets in her head. About money? I asked. Casual, like I was asking about the weather. Another pause. Longer this time. What are you talking about? He said. And right there, I knew he didn't know what I knew. Or he didn't want to say it out loud. Either way, I wasn't going to blow it over the phone. So I backed off. Nothing. Just checking on you. He brightened again. I'm good, Mom. Dad's been helping a lot. He's been really supportive. Supportive, that word again. I ended the call, and my hands were shaking so bad I had to sit down at the kitchen table. Robert was still out. The house was too quiet. My phone sat in front of me with those photos, bank statements, loan documents, that stupid do not tell mom note, like they were staring back. Look, if you're watching this and you've ever found out your kid is drowning in something, you know that feeling. Your heart breaks, but your anger lights up at the same time. Because somebody put him there. I wasn't done. Not even close. Later that afternoon, I drove to the Walmart off Morse Road and sat in the parking lot like a lunatic, just thinking. I needed a plan that didn't rely on Robert suddenly growing a conscience. I needed leverage. So I pulled up my bank app and went through our joint account line by line. Then I pulled my credit card statement. Then I went into the alerts section and turned on notifications for every transaction over $100. If money was moving, I wanted to hear it move. When I got home, Robert's car was in the driveway, and the front door was cracked open like he'd come in fast. I walked inside and heard voices outside, low, tense, coming from the backyard. I didn't even take my shoes off. I went straight toward the kitchen window. Robert was out there with Daniel Rodriguez, near the fence line, close to the shed where Nicole had been barking at him the night before. Robert's posture was rigid. Daniel's hands were in fists, like he was trying not to shake. And then Robert did something I hadn't seen him do in years. He grabbed Daniel's arm, not hard, but firm, like, stay right here, like, don't you dare walk away. Daniel jerked his arm free, and his face twisted up like he was at the end of his rope. He said something I couldn't hear, but it looked like, "I can't." Robert stepped closer. His mouth was moving fast. Then, Nicole's car pulled up. I watched her come through the side gate like she'd been summoned. She didn't even glance at the house. She went straight to them, jaw tight, eyes sharp. She inserted herself between Robert and Daniel like she was the boss. That told me everything I needed to know. Nicole wasn't reacting to rumors. She was managing a team. I threw open the back door and walked out, heart pounding. "What the hell is going on back here?" I said. All three of them turned toward me like I'd fired a gun. Robert's face went white. Nicole's eyes flashed. Daniel looked relieved. Like, finally, somebody else sees it. Nicole forced that sugary tone. "Linda, we were just talking about the landscaping schedule." "The landscaping schedule," I repeated. "In my backyard, looking like you're about to kill each other." "If teens of..." Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Robert, like Robert was silently begging him not to talk. Robert stepped toward me, hands up, voice low. "Linda, it's not what you think. That line right there? That line is what liars say when the truth is standing behind them with a baseball bat." Nicole cut in fast. "This is inappropriate. You're making a scene." "In my yard," I said. "With my husband? With my gardener?" "Yeah, Nicole, I'm gonna make a scene." "It's not Tina." Daniel looked at Nicole, and something in his face hardened. He wasn't scared of me. He was scared of her. And then he said it. He looked straight at me and said, "Ma'am, you need to know." Nicole's head snapped toward him so fast, I thought she'd break her neck. "Don't," she hissed. Robert stepped between us like he could physically block words. "Daniel, stop." Daniel didn't stop. He took one step closer to me, eyes wet, jaw tight, like he'd been holding his breath for months. And Nicole did something I didn't expect. She smiled, not sweet, not fake friendly. A slow, satisfied smile, like she just realized she didn't have to play nice anymore. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and held it up so Robert could see. Robert's shoulders sagged like he'd been shot. They hit back. Nicole's phone didn't even have to be loud. You could feel it, and you know exactly what I mean. She held the screen up toward Robert Miller, and his whole body just sank. Shoulders dropped. Eyes went dull. That quiet, stubborn man I'd been married to for decades looked like somebody had finally tightened the noose. Daniel Rodriguez stood there by the fence with his hands balled into fists, breathing hard like he'd been running. Nicole Garcia stood between him and Robert like a referee, except she wasn't stopping a fight. She was running it. And I stood on my own patio with my heart kicking against my ribs, thinking, so this is it. This is the moment where the lie either dies or it eats me alive. "Wrong move, Nicole." I took one step forward and said, "Put the phone down." Nicole's smile stayed in place, but her eyes sharpened. "Linda, this really isn't your business." "In my backyard," I said. "With my husband? Try again." Robert's mouth opened like he was going to talk. Then he looked at Nicole's phone again and shut it. That did something ugly to me. Not jealousy. Not even betrayal anymore. Fear. Because whatever she was holding over him, it worked. Daniel looked at me, and there was something in his face that made my throat tighten. Guilt. Panic. And underneath it, relief. Like he'd been waiting for someone to finally call it what it was. Nicole's voice dropped low. "We can do this the easy way," she said, aimed at Robert. "Or we can do it the hard way. The audacity." I said, "What is it, Nicole? Go ahead. Say it out loud." She turned that slow smile on me, like she was enjoying the fact that I didn't have the whole puzzle yet. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "You've had a comfortable life." Oh, that hit a nerve. Because yes, I've had a good life. I've worked for it. I've built it. And I wasn't about to let a 28-year-old con artist walk into my home and start dividing up what I'd earned. Daniel finally spoke, and his voice cracked. Ma'am? It's not what she said at dinner. Nicole snapped her head at him. Shut up. Robert stepped toward Daniel, palms out. Daniel, don't. Daniel flinched, like he was trained to obey. That told me this wasn't a casual mess. This was pressure. This was somebody using fear like currency. I looked straight at Robert. Inside, now, he hesitated for half a second, and Nicole lifted her phone again. Just a tiny movement. Robert's eyes flicked to it, and he followed me inside. Nicole didn't try to stop him. She didn't have to. She watched us go like she'd already calculated the outcome. Daniel stood frozen by the fence, staring at the ground. I went through the kitchen, into the study, and shut the door. Robert stood by his desk like a kid called into the principal's office. He wouldn't sit. He wouldn't look at me. I kept my voice low because I didn't trust my volume. What is she holding over you? He swallowed. Linda, please, don't please me, I said. I've got bank statements and loan papers with our son's name on them. I watched her hand Daniel an envelope of cash. I heard you on the phone saying you'd get the money. So start talking. Robert rubbed his face with both hands. Slow. He looked exhausted. Not guilty like a cheater. Worn down like somebody who's been living under a threat for a while. She's pregnant, he said. I know, I snapped. She announced it like she was winning a prize. Jazz. He flinched at that and said, Evan's in trouble. That stopped me. Not because I didn't suspect it. I did. I had that manila folder burned into my brain. But hearing Robert say it out loud made it real, in a way paper can't. What kind of trouble? I asked. Robert stared at the wall, jaw tight. Gambling? He said. It started small. I didn't know at first. And then it wasn't small anymore. I felt my whole body heat up. Evan doesn't gamble. Robert laughed once, bitter and short. That's what I told myself. He went to the desk drawer and pulled out something I hadn't noticed before, tucked behind a stack of envelopes. A small notebook, the kind you buy at Target in a 3-pack. He set it down between us like it weighed 50 pounds. Numbers, names, dates, amounts. My stomach twisted. How much? I asked. Robert's voice came out rough. Over 100,000. I actually had to grab the back of his desk chair to steady myself. Over $100. That isn't oops. That's disaster. That's the kind of debt that doesn't just ruin credit scores. That ruins lives. I looked at Robert and said, how? He shut his eyes for a second. It started with sports betting. Then it turned into online casinos. Then it turned into people. Guys who aren't a bank. The way he said guys made my skin crawl. I lowered my voice. Are you telling me somebody's threatening our son? Robert nodded once. They started calling the house. They found his work number. They told him they'd come here. My chest tightened like somebody was squeezing it. And Nicole? Robert's mouth pulled tight. She found out. She didn't pull him out. She got him deeper. Two-faced. I paced in that small study, back and forth like a trapped animal. So Nicole's what? Helping him or using him? Robert's eyes finally met mine, and that's when I saw the shame in them. Both. Then he said the thing that hit me the hardest. She told me if I didn't help, she'd tell you I was cheating. I stared at him. What? Robert's hands were shaking. She said you'd believe her. She said you'd leave, and Evan would be alone with the debt and the baby and the creditors. She said you'd cut him off. I couldn't even speak for a second. My throat felt like it was full of sand. So you let her, I said, voice tight. You let her paint you as a cheater. You let her whisper that baby lie to me. Robert's eyes filled. He blinked hard, like he was trying not to show it. I was trying to protect him. Protect him. By letting me rot in confusion, by letting her weaponize my marriage, I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to shake him until his teeth rattled. Instead, I said, Did you sleep with her? Robert snapped his head up like I'd slapped him. No, he said, never. He leaned forward, voice fierce, for the first time in weeks. I never touched her. And that sentence landed like a hammer, because it didn't sound like an excuse. It sounded like truth that had been suffocating him. I stopped pacing. Then why the jewelry charges? Robert's face fell again. She told me what to buy, he admitted, as proof for you to find, for the story to look real. I felt sick. This wasn't a marriage problem. This was a staged crime scene. And Daniel? I asked, already dreading the answer. Robert hesitated. He got pulled in, he said. Nicole knew him from before. Not like friends. Just she met him. And she used him. Used him how? My mind went straight to the worst place. Robert's jaw worked like he was grinding his teeth. He's the baby's father, he said, barely above a whisper. I froze. Say that again, I said. Robert swallowed. The baby isn't mine. It isn't Evan's. It's Daniel's. My vision went sharp at the edges, like the room went too bright. That's when everything changed. I pressed my hand to the desk and said, Nicole is planning to pass that baby off as Evan's. Robert nodded. She said, if Evan believes it, he'll stay. And if Evan stays, she keeps access to everything. Access to our money, our house, our son's future, and the leverage to keep Robert paying. I turned away from him and stared out the study window at our backyard. It looked so normal. Green grass, a tool shed, the fence line. And somewhere in that normal, my family was being gutted. I took a breath and said, Where's Evan in all this? Robert's voice cracked. He knows about the debt, he said. He swore me to secrecy. He begged me not to tell you. My stomach burned. And you agreed. Robert's shoulders sagged. He's my son. Yeah, I snapped. He's my son too. There was a beat where neither of us spoke. Then, from outside, I heard Nicole's laugh. It was faint through the window, like a reminder that she was still here, still confident. Robert wiped his face and said, She's going to ruin him. I turned back and said, Not if I ruin her first. Gone. Done. Robert flinched. Linda. No, I said. You don't get to stop me now. You've been letting her run this house like she's the landlord. I'm taking it back. I walked out of the study and straight to the back door. Nicole was still near the fence, pretending to look at the garden like she belonged there. Daniel stood a few feet away, staring at his boots. I stepped outside and called Daniel's name. Daniel. He looked up, eyes wide. Nicole snapped. Don't talk to him. I ignored her. Daniel, come here, I said firm. Right now. He hesitated, then took 2 steps toward me like he wasn't sure if he was allowed. Nicole moved fast and grabbed his sleeve. No, she said, through her teeth. And Daniel did something that surprised me. He pulled his arm away. Nicole's face tightened. You're really going to do this? She hissed at him. Daniel looked at her, and his voice came out low and shaking. I can't keep doing this anymore. That was the crack. Nicole's smile vanished. After everything I've done for you? She snapped. Daniel's eyes flashed. Done for me? You handed me cash like I'm your errand boy. Nicole's hands curled into fists. She looked at me and said, Linda, you don't know what your son is. I stepped closer to her. I know what you are. Nicole's lips parted like she was about to spit something nasty. Then she caught herself and tried to switch back to sweet, like she could reset again. This is stress, she said. Pregnancy stress. You're taking things the wrong way. Cut the crap, I said, and my own voice sounded foreign to me. Calm, cold. Who's the baby's father? Nicole's eyes flicked to Daniel. A warning. Daniel's jaw clenched. It's mine, he said. Nicole spun on him like a snake. You're lying. Daniel shook his head, and his voice broke. I'm not. Silence hit hard. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Nicole's face went pale, then flushed red. She turned to me fast, eyes sharp. Linda, if you say one word to Evan, I'm his mother, I said. You don't get to threaten me. Nicole stepped back like she was recalculating. Then she smiled again, slow and nasty. Truth is subjective, isn't it, Linda? That line made my stomach drop, because it wasn't a denial. It was a promise that she'd twist anything she needed to. Daniel looked like he might throw up. He glanced toward the street like he wanted to run. And Robert, my husband, stood in the doorway behind me, watching all of it with tears in his eyes. Nicole looked at him and said, "You're still on the schedule. Tomorrow evening. Schedule." Like he was a delivery. Robert's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Nicole turned and walked toward the side gate, chin up, acting like she'd just won. But I saw her hand trembling when she grabbed the latch. She wasn't scared of me yet. Not yet. As soon as she left, Daniel stayed for 1 minute longer. He looked at me like he wanted to apologize, but didn't have language for it. "I'm sorry," he said, simple. I nodded once. Where did she get that DNA test? Daniel's eyes widened. What DNA test? And right there, I knew Nicole had a deeper plan than just whispering lies. She had receipts, too. She just hadn't realized I could collect mine faster. Daniel took a step back. "I can't stay," he said. She's got people." "People?" I repeated. He nodded, eyes darting. "You don't want them at your door." Then he walked off toward his truck, shoulders hunched, moving like a man who expected to be chased. He drove away without even finishing the yard. Robert and I stood on the patio in the afternoon sun, looking at the half-raked lawn like it was a crime scene. My hands were shaking again, but my mind was clear. Nicole had leverage. Money, shame, fear, and a baby. But leverage only works if you don't have proof. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and my photographs and that manila folder information swirling in my head. I called my sister once, just to hear a normal voice. But I didn't tell her details. Not yet. Loose talk ruins plans. Instead, I did something practical. I pulled Evan's credit report online and stared at it until my eyes watered. Accounts I didn't recognize. Balances I didn't understand. Payment histories that looked like a slow-motion car wreck. My son's name on the debt, and his wife holding the steering wheel. Saturday morning, Nicole texted me, bright and fake. "Hey, Mom, can I stop by later? I think I left something at your house." My pulse jumped. Left something. That sounded like a fishing line tossed into the water. She didn't want a missing hair clip. She wanted to see if I'd found anything. I texted back, "Sure," because I wanted her to come. I wanted to watch her face. Around noon, she showed up alone. No Evan, no sweetness. She walked straight upstairs like she knew exactly where she was going. Toward the guest bathroom. I followed, quiet. She stepped into that bathroom and immediately started scanning counter trash can, the little shelf by the sink too fast, too frantic. Then she glanced at me and forced a laugh. "Pregnancy brain," she said. "I swear I'm losing everything." I leaned against the doorframe. "What'd you lose?" Nicole's eyes flicked to the toilet like she couldn't help it. "Oh, just paperwork," she said. "Light. Doctor stuff." Doctor stuff. She turned toward the toilet, and I watched her face go tight, then looser again when she didn't see anything. Because she didn't know I'd already seen everything. I waited until she left, until her car pulled away, then I went into that bathroom, shut the door, and dropped to my knees beside the toilet like a crazy person. And I checked behind it. There, wedged between the tank and the wall, was a crumpled piece of paper, white, folded, stuck like it had been shoved there fast. My hands went cold as I pulled it out. It was a DNA lab report. My eyes jumped straight to the percentages, because numbers don't lie even when people do. Evan excluded, 0%. Daniel, not excluded, 99.7%. I sat back on the tile and stared at it until my vision blurred. Not from tears, from rage, from relief, from the sharp, metallic feeling of finally holding the truth in my hands. Nicole dropped the proof in my bathroom. In my house, like I was too stupid to look. Big mistake. I folded that report and slid it into my pocket like it was a winning lottery ticket. Then I walked downstairs and found Robert in the kitchen, staring out the window like he was waiting for the world to end. I set the paper on the table between us. Robert's face crumpled the second he saw the header. He covered his mouth with his hand, and a sound came out of him I hadn't heard in years. Half sob, half laugh, like his body didn't know whether to break or breathe. "She's been carrying this," he whispered. "Yeah," I said, "and now I am." And I watched him for a long second, the way you watch someone you love when they've hurt you, but you can finally see the why. I wasn't ready to forgive him, not even close, but I was ready to fight with him instead of against him. "Listen to me," I said. "We are going to do this my way." Robert nodded, wiping his face. "We don't blow up Evan in the driveway," I said. "We don't scream in front of neighbors. We don't give Nicole a scene she can twist into a victim story." I quote. Robert swallowed and nodded again. "We set a table," I said. "We invite them over. We let her walk in feeling safe." My voice went calm, almost quiet. "And then we slide this paper across the china like it's dessert. Receipts end the game." Robert stared at the report like it was radioactive. "He's going to be destroyed," he whispered. "I know," I said, and my throat tightened despite myself. "But letting her keep doing this will destroy him worse." 1. I folded the report back up and tucked it into a manila folder with the bank statement photos and the loan documents from Evan's room. A neat little stack of truth. It felt heavy in my hands. Then I opened my calendar on the fridge and circled Sunday, because Sunday dinner in my house has rules. And Nicole was about to learn them. I found the weapon. Sunday dinner wasn't about food. It was about control. And you know what? Control looks a lot like calm right up until the moment it doesn't. Robert Miller tried to act normal all morning, but his hands gave him away. He set the table twice, then moved the forks back like an inch mattered. He stood at the kitchen sink staring at nothing, then jumped when the toaster popped like it was a gunshot. I didn't baby him. I didn't scold him. I just kept moving. Because here's the thing, Nicole Garcia fed on chaos. If I gave her yelling, she'd turn it into a victim story. If I gave her tears, she'd call me unstable. If I gave her a scene, she'd use it to keep Evan Miller hooked. So I gave her what she couldn't twist. A table, a smile, and paperwork. Quiet dignity beats chaos. I made Evan's favorites like I always did: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans with bacon, and that apple pie I've been making since he was in Little League. I used the good china again, the one with the thin gold rim, the same chandelier light, the same dining room. If Nicole wanted a replay, she was going to get it, just not the one she planned. Robert and I didn't talk much while I cooked. We didn't need to. The manila folder sat in the kitchen drawer under the pot holders, right where my hand could reach it if I needed it fast. DNA lab report on top. Photos of bank statements behind that. Evan's loan documents behind that. A stack of truth. I texted Evan around noon. "Dinner at 6. Bring Nicole." I made pie. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would set off alarms. He texted back almost right away with a bunch of happy emojis, like he was still living inside the lie. "We'll be there. Nicole's been craving your mashed potatoes." That line made me want to bite through a spoon. So yeah, my hands shook a little when I salted the roast. Not because I doubted myself, because I knew exactly what I was about to do to my son's world. And I still did it. Some people say I went too far. I say I didn't go far enough. At 5:30, I walked upstairs and checked the guest bathroom like a ritual. Not because I expected a miracle, because I wanted to remember the moment I found the weapon behind the toilet like some kind of sick scavenger hunt. Then I washed my hands and went downstairs. At 6 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. My stomach didn't flip this time. It settled. I opened the door, and there they were. Evan with that bright, hopeful face. Nicole with that glowing, carefully staged posture. one hand resting under her belly like a photo shoot. She wore a soft dress and a cardigan, like she was auditioning for Perfect Mom. Robert stood behind me, shoulders tight. Nicole stepped in and kissed my cheek like we were family, like she hadn't threatened me in my own kitchen. "Hi, Mom," she said, sweet as syrup. I smiled back. "Hi, Nicole." One, Evan hugged me, big and warm, and for half a second, I almost lost it. Because that's my boy, my kid, the baby I brought home from Riverside Methodist Hospital decades ago, and now he was walking into a trap built by his own wife. I held it together. We sat down. The chandelier light warmed everything, the way it always did. Nicole complimented the table. Evan talked about work. Robert barely touched his drink. I didn't rush it. I let them settle into comfort, because comfort makes people careless. Halfway through the meal, Evan started talking about baby stuff, nursery colors, doctor appointments, names. Nicole kept saying we, like she owned the future. I watched her mouth. I watched her hands. I watched her eyes slide to Robert every so often, like she was checking that her puppet strings were still attached. They weren't. I waited until plates were mostly cleared, when everyone naturally slowed down. Then I set my fork down and said, "You know what's funny?" Evan blinked. "What?" I kept my voice light. "How much genetics gets talked about now? Everybody's doing those DNA kits, finding out they're 15% this or that. Even paternity testing is common. People don't even blink anymore." Nicole's smile froze for the tiniest second. She tried to recover. "Oh, yeah," she said. "Science is wild." Robert stared at his plate like it might save him. Evan laughed. "Mom, why are we talking about paternity tests?" I turned to him, calm. "Because truth matters, honey, especially when a baby's involved." Nicole's hand tightened on her water glass. She set it down a little too hard. "Linda," she said, still sweet, "this feels weird." "Does it?" I asked. Evan looked between us, confused. "What's going on?" Nicole reached for his hand fast, like she could anchor him back to her story. "Nothing. Your mom's just stressed. Stressed. That old move." I stood up from the table. Not dramatically, just enough to make the room pay attention. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and took out the manila folder like I was grabbing dessert plates. Then I came back and set it on the table in front of Nicole. Her eyes dropped to it. Her face drained of color. And right then, you could see it denial trying to sprint ahead of panic. Nicole laughed, a short fake laugh. "What is that?" I slid the top page out, turned it around, and pushed it toward her with 2 fingers. "You dropped this in my bathroom," I said. The paper stopped in front of her like a judge's gavel. Evan leaned forward, frowning. "What is it?" Nicole didn't answer him. She stared at the header like it was written in fire. Her lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes flicked to Robert, sharp and furious. Robert didn't look at her. He looked at Evan. Evan picked the paper up, still not understanding, and scanned it. I watched his face change as his eyes hit the percentages. Confusion. Then a pause. Then something cracking. He looked up at Nicole. "What is this?" Nicole's voice came out too high. "That's not Evan. That's not real." Evan's eyes dropped back to the page, and he read it again, like maybe the numbers would rearrange themselves if he stared hard enough. His knuckles went white around the paper. He swallowed and said, "It says I'm excluded." Nicole reached for him. "Baby, listen." He pulled away like her touch burned. "It says I'm excluded," he repeated, louder, like he needed the room to hear it. Robert finally spoke, voice low and steady. "Evan, I never touched her. Not once." Nicole snapped her head toward Robert. "Shut up." Robert didn't. He looked right at Evan and said it again, stronger. "I never touched her." Nicole's mask started slipping fast now. Her eyes darted around the table, looking for a way out, looking for an angle, looking for a person she could turn into a shield. Evan's voice broke. "Nicole, whose baby is it?" Nicole's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me like she wanted me to save her, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I just sat back down. Receipts end the game. Nicole's shoulders lifted like she was about to cry, and for 1 second, she tried the classic move, soft voice, trembling lip. Evan, I was scared. Your dad pressured me. Robert slammed his hand down on the table, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to cut her off. His voice came out raw. Don't you put this on me. Nicole's eyes flashed. Then who am I supposed to put it on? Try the mirror, I said. Evan looked like he might throw up. He pushed his chair back and stood, breathing hard. No, he said. No, no, no. His eyes were glassy. He looked at Robert. Dad, why do you have this? Robert's face crumpled. Because she was using me, he said. And because you. He stopped, swallowed, and looked at me like he hated himself. I finished it for him. Because you begged him not to tell me, I said to Evan. Quiet, but clear. Evan's face went blank. What? Nicole lunged for the folder, like she could grab the rest of the papers and erase them. I slapped my hand down over it, calm as a librarian. Don't. Used. Nicole froze, breathing hard through her nose. Evan looked at the folder again. What else is in there? Nicole's eyes widened. Nothing. It's nothing. I slid the next page out, one of the photos of the separate bank account statement, and pushed it toward Evan. That's your dad's secret account, I said. Used to pull cash. Evan stared, confused. Why? Then I slid one of Evan's loan documents forward, the one with his name and the lender and the balance. And that's you, I said. Loans, credit lines, cash advances, big withdrawals. Evan's face turned a sick shade of gray. He grabbed the paper, stared, and his jaw started trembling. Nicole whispered, Evan. He whipped toward her. How do you know about this? He snapped. How does my mom know about this? Nicole's mouth moved like she was forming lies at high speed, but nothing clean came out. Evan's voice rose. Did you do this? Nicole's eyes went wild. I was trying to fix it, by burying him deeper. Evan's hands shook as he flipped through the pages like a man reading his own autopsy. He found the handwritten "Do not tell mom" note, and his face twisted like he'd been punched. He looked at me, and for the first time all week, he looked like a scared kid again. Mom, he said hoarse, I didn't want you to know. I nodded once. I know. Nicole started crying then. For real or for show, who knows? Tears ran down her face, and she clutched her belly. Evan, please, she said. I needed help. We needed money. Those people, Evan's eyes snapped sharp. Those people? Nicole hesitated, and that hesitation told me plenty. Robert leaned forward, voice low. They were calling the house, he admitted. They threatened to come here. Evan's face went rigid with shame. Why would you tell them our address? I didn't, Robert said, miserable. They found it. Evan looked down like he wanted to disappear. Nicole tried to take his hand again, and Evan pulled away harder this time. Don't touch me, he said. Nicole's sobbing stopped mid-breath. Excuse me? You heard me, Evan said. His voice shook, but it was firm. You lied about the baby. You lied about my dad. You lied about money. Nicole's eyes narrowed, sharp again. You're not going to leave me. Evan stared at her like he didn't recognize her. Watch me. Nicole's face went into full panic, then real panic. The kind that makes people ugly. You can't, she said fast. You don't understand what I did for you. Evan's voice broke into a laugh that wasn't happy. What you did for me? You put me in a hole and used my dad as a shovel. Nicole stood up so fast her chair screeched. She pointed at Robert. He's the one who paid. He's the one who hid it. He's the one who... Robert stood too, eyes blazing. Because you told me you'd destroy this family. Nicole's lips curled. I still can. And that's when I said, Nicole, sit down. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Sit down. She sat. Evan's breathing was ragged. His hands were clenched. He looked like he wanted to punch a wall. Instead, he looked at me and said, "Is it Daniel's?" Nicole's eyes flicked away. Evan's face hardened. I answered it because somebody had to. "Yes," I said. Nicole snapped, "You don't know that." Evan lifted the DNA report, shaking. "It literally says it," he said. "It says another man is 99.7. Nicole's shoulders sagged like the last thread snapped. She stared at the table, then whispered, "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." And I almost laughed, because of course she didn't. She meant for it to happen like Tuesday. Whispered poison, public joy, private control. Not today. Evan's voice went quiet. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" Nicole didn't answer. Evan nodded like that was the only answer he needed. He pushed his chair back and said, "Pack your stuff." Nicole's head jerked up. "Evan, pack," he repeated. "Right now." Nicole's face twisted in fury. "You're going to throw out your pregnant wife?" Evan's eyes filled, but he didn't blink. "You're not my wife," he said. "Not after this." That sentence hit like a door slamming. Nicole turned to me, eyes sharp again. "Are you happy now?" I looked right back at her. "I'm not happy. I'm finished." Nicole stood, grabbed her purse, and stormed toward the stairs like she could still take the house with her. Evan followed behind her, shaking, and I heard them upstairs, drawers opening, hangers clattering, suitcase wheels thumping down the hallway. Robert sank back into his chair, face in his hands. I didn't comfort him. Not yet. I just put a glass of water in front of him and said, "You're going to tell me everything tomorrow. Every name, every amount, every call." 18. Robert nodded like a man accepting sentencing. "Okay," he whispered. Nicole came down the stairs, dragging 2 suitcases like she'd practiced leaving. Her face was blotchy. Her eyes were dry now. Evan carried a 3rd bag and wouldn't look at her. At the front door, Nicole stopped and turned back like she wanted one last swing. "You think this ends me?" she said. I stepped forward and held up my phone. "Your bank already got a call," I said. And Monday morning, Evan's locking down his credit and filing a police report for the accounts in his name. Nicole's eyes widened. "You can't." "I can," I said. And I did. Salt in the wound? Here it is. I opened the door and said, "Also, Daniel's sister lives in Phoenix. Her name's Maria Rodriguez. She's expecting your call, and she knows exactly why." Nicole's mouth dropped open. "How do you?" "Because I don't bluff," I said, "and I don't forget." End quote. Nicole's face went through it in real-time denial, then anger. Then that hollow panic when you realize the story you built is collapsing from every side. She wasn't going to have my house. She wasn't going to have Robert's silence. She wasn't going to have Evan's blind loyalty. And she definitely wasn't going to have control. Nicole's voice went small, almost childish. "Evan, please." Evan didn't answer. He just walked to her car, popped the trunk, and shoved the suitcases in without a single gentle movement. Then he shut it and stepped back like the whole thing disgusted him. Nicole climbed into the driver's seat with shaking hands. She stared at Evan like she expected him to change his mind at the last second. He didn't. She backed out of the driveway and left. The house went quiet so fast it made my ears ring. Evan stood on the porch, staring into the street like he was watching his life disappear. Then his shoulders shook, and he made a sound I never want to hear from my child again. I stepped closer, careful. "Hey," I said, soft. "Look at me." He looked up, eyes wrecked. "Mom, I messed up." "I know," I said, "and you're going to fix it." That night wasn't clean. Evan didn't sleep. He paced. He cried. He got angry, then sick, then quiet. Robert tried to talk once, and Evan snapped at him so hard Robert actually flinched. I didn't stop Evan. Robert needed to feel it. Truth hurts. Lies rot. By Monday morning, we were in motion. Evan sat at my kitchen table with his laptop open, freezing his credit. We called the lenders from those loan papers. We wrote down account numbers. We requested fraud packets. We documented everything like we were building a case because we were. Robert called the bank and closed that separate account. He transferred what was left into the joint account in front of me, not hiding behind privacy anymore. I watched him sign papers with a hand that wouldn't steady. Then we called an attorney, a real one, a Columbus guy with a no-nonsense voice who didn't gasp or judge. He just asked for facts and told us what steps to take. We filed a police report for identity theft related to the accounts. We started the paper trail that Nicole couldn't charm her way out of. Evan kept whispering, "I can't believe I did this," like he was trying to rewind time with repetition. I told him, "You're alive. You're home. You're not alone. Start there." And then came the part that surprised people. Evan went to Gamblers Anonymous, not because I forced him, because once the lie was dead, he had nowhere to hide. He sat in the parking lot of a church off Bethel Road with his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, and he looked at me like he was 14 again, scared to walk into a new school. I said, "Go in." He nodded and got out. That took more courage than any lie he ever told me. Robert and I didn't magically become fine. Don't get it twisted. There were nights I slept in the guest room because my anger wouldn't fit in our bed. There were mornings I looked at him and thought, "You let me be the fool in my own house." But we were finally on the same side. Weeks passed. Nicole didn't disappear quietly. She tried to text Evan. She tried to call from random numbers. She sent long messages about forgiveness and family and stress. Evan blocked her. Then she tried my phone. I didn't block her right away. I let one message come through just to see what she thought she could still do. It was a photo of her belly with a caption, "You can't take this from me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I texted back one sentence. "I'm not taking it. I'm returning it." Then I blocked her. A month later, a plain envelope showed up in our mailbox. No return address. Just our name in shaky handwriting. Inside was a photo. A newborn baby girl, bundled in a pink blanket, dark eyes open, like she was already suspicious of the world. There was a small note on the back in Nicole's handwriting. "She's healthy. No apology. No accountability. Just a reminder that she still wanted a thread." Evan held that photo for a long time. He didn't cry. He just stared, breathing slow, like he was trying to process grief without drowning in it. Then he handed it back to me and said, "I hope she's okay, but she's not mine." And that was the end of that. Later, much later, Evan met someone else, a woman named Sarah Johnson. Quiet, kind, the type who doesn't perform. She didn't need to win a room. She just existed honestly in it. Evan didn't rush. He went to meetings. He paid down debts. He rebuilt his credit. He rebuilt himself. And when he finally had a baby that was actually his, it didn't feel like a trophy. It felt like redemption earned the hard way. Nicole never got her power back because power built on lies doesn't survive receipts. So, yeah, I'm not over it, and I don't think I ever will be. But I sleep in my own bed now without feeling like someone's whispering in my ear. And if you've ever watched someone try to hijack your family with a lie, stick around and subscribe because I promise you, the truth always has teeth. Karma doesn't knock. It walks right in.